When we picture ancient Sparta, we usually imagine a synchronized, indestructible military machine. But in the 9th century BC, the city was a failing state. It was paralyzed by extreme inequality and crippled by a cycle of political assassinations and violent riots. During one of these riots, the reigning king was stabbed to death with a butcher's knife. The right of succession fell to his younger brother, Lycurgus, who suddenly found himself holding the title of king in a city on the verge of collapse. Lycurgus held the throne for only months before learning the widowed queen was pregnant. She offered to destroy the infant if he would marry her and secure his crown. Lycurgus didn't just refuse. He waited for the birth, carried the boy to the magistrates, and announced, "Men of Sparta, here is a king born unto us." He named the boy Carilius, the joy of the people, and stepped down to serve only as the child's guardian. This act of integrity made Lycurgus a hero to the commoners, but it turned the queen's powerful family into immediate enemies. They began spreading rumors that Lycurgus was plotting to kill his nephew, forcing him to choose between a civil war or a quiet departure. To protect the young king's succession, Lycurgus set sail for a voluntary exile that would last years. He traveled from Crete to Asia, using the time to study foreign governments and compare the habits of sober, temperate cultures against those of the indulgent and the wealthy. In Asia, he began transcribing the works of Homer. While others read these as mere entertainment, Lycurgus focused on the moral lessons and rules of statecraft hidden within the verses, believing these epics could serve as a psychological blueprint to civilize his people and reunite them in an admiration for virtue. Back in Sparta, the state was fracturing without him. The kings and commoners alike sent messengers begging for his return, claiming that while they had men who wore crowns, only Lycurgus had the nature made to rule. Before returning, he visited the oracle at Delphi, who hailed him as beloved of God, and prophesied that his laws would make his country the most famous in the world. Lycurgus returned to a city that functioned like a diseased body. He treated the ruins of the old Sparta as a physician would a terminal patient. Concluding that a few minor laws wouldn't be enough, he would have to exhaust the old temperament of the city entirely and put the population on a total mandatory regimen. He started with the most dangerous reform, land. Lycurgus convinced the citizens to renounce their properties and redistributed the entire country into 30,000 perfectly equal shares. He wanted a state where merit was the only road to eminence, and the only difference between neighbors was the credit of worthy acts. To eliminate luxury, he called in all gold and silver coin. In its place, he issued a currency made of iron. These rods were so heavy and of such low value that storing a small fortune required a large closet, and moving it required a yoke of oxen. Lycurgus even ordered the iron to be quenched in vinegar while red hot, making it brittle and impossible to work into tools. This made money physically useless for anything other than trade. Hoarding, bribery, and theft became impractical because the currency was impossible to hide and a burden to carry. This iron money effectively starved all luxury out of Sparta. Foreign merchants stopped sailing to their ports, and jewelers, fortune-tellers, and rhetoricians avoided a country where their skills earned no profit. Deprived of the wealth that fed it, the desire for superfluities died away on its own. His next ordinance banned private dining. Every citizen, including the kings, was forced to eat the same specified meats and bread in public mess halls. This prevented the wealthy from delivering themselves into the hands of cooks to be fattened like greedy brutes in the privacy of their own homes. This restriction on private comfort sparked a riot. A group of wealthy men cornered Lycurgus in the marketplace, and a young man named Alcander struck him in the face with a staff, blinding him in one eye. Rather than retreating, Lycurgus stopped and showed his disfigured face to the crowd. Ashamed, the citizens delivered Alcander to him for punishment. Lycurgus's punishment was unconventional. He made Alcander his sole attendant at the common table. By living with Lycurgus, the young man observed his teacher's calmness and industry, eventually telling his friends that the lawgiver wasn't a morose tyrant, but the most gentle character in the world. Lycurgus then extended state control to the human life cycle itself. Newborns were brought before the tribal elders. Those found stout and well-made were granted a share of land. Those deemed puny or ill-shaped were taken to the apathy, a chasm beneath Mount Taygetus, on the principle that a life without health was of no use to the state. At age 7, Boys entered the agoge. They were forced to go barefoot, sleep on rushes they broke by hand from the riverbanks, and were given only one coat to last the year. They were intentionally underfed, so they would be forced to exercise their energy and address by stealing food, an education designed for a single purpose: perfect obedience. Every law was designed to ensure that no Spartan could or would live for themselves. They were to cluster like bees around their commander, their individual identities entirely consumed by the zeal for the public good. For 5 centuries, the chaos of the 9th century vanished. Sparta possessed no gold, no massive walls, and no luxury, yet it became the master of Greece. The city functioned not as a standard government, but as a perpetual military camp, where citizens viewed themselves as born solely for the interest of their country. Knowing human nature was fickle, Lycurgus feared his people would eventually abandon these strictures. He called a grand assembly and forced the kings, the Senate, and the commons to swear a binding oath. They would maintain his form of government without any alteration until he returned from Delphi. He returned to the oracle, who gave him a final confirmation. His laws were excellent, and his people would live in the height of renown as long as they observed them. Lycurgus sent this prophecy back to Sparta in writing, but he did not follow it. To ensure the Spartans were never released from their oath, Lycurgus decided he would never return. He ended his life through a total abstinence from food, believing that even a statesman's death should be an act of service to the state. He left orders for his body to be burned in Crete and his ashes scattered into the sea. He wanted to ensure that no physical remains could ever be transported back to Lacedaemon, preventing the people from ever claiming their contract was fulfilled. The sacrificial checkmate worked. Because Lycurgus never returned, the oath remained standing. For 500 years, Sparta remained locked in his rigid egalitarian system, ruling as the premier power of Greece, governed by the laws of a man who vanished to ensure they would never change.